All right, so one of the biggest ways that I use math in my research and why it's important, particularly in ecology, is for statistics. So in ecology, we're really interested in variation. There's so much natural variation that we see in nature, and how do we know whether that variation is statistically different from another group? You know, individuals can be so variable, and statistics is really the only tool that we have to be able to sort out if our two groups that we're interested in are really different from each other. We couldn't do it without statistics.
When you have scientific evidence, you have to weigh it, right? And you have to have some way of quantifying it. So, you know, in one respect, when you look at how math plays a role in biology, it's in quantifying evidence, in quantifying uncertainty in measurements that we take, right? So, and that's really important, right? So if you have evidence from an experiment and you want to know, well, is this significant or not? How do I know that if this is occurring or if it's not occurring? Treatment and control. You turn to statistics and you turn to this idea of quantifying evidence. Biology is full of complexities. It's full of variation too, right? So how do you say something about what's going on in the biological system when you have all this variation and you have all this complexity going on? Now that we have a better handle on some of the players and the pieces, how are they interacting, and how is all of this interaction going on affecting the emergent phenomena of the system that we're seeing, right? So you can do mathematical modeling where you can, in an abstract way, remove a lot of the complications and the complexities, get it down to a much more simplified version so that you can actually answer, ask questions that you can answer.
You know, I don't love math, but I love what math can tell me about biology.
Well, I think I would, keep going along the path of taking some math courses with your science classes. That's generally recommended most of the time.
So in my lab, we took two different groups of rats, and we had one group of rats undergo endurance training, and the other group of rats was sedentary. And from there, we're trying to find out what is controlling the vasodilation in the group of rats that is exercising. And vasodilation is what is allowing blood flow to increase in the group of rats that's exercising. And lack of vasodilation is one of the symptoms of cardiovascular disease in humans. So what we found was different values for protein content and nitric oxide content in the groups of rats. But the data doesn't mean anything without using a specific test to try to find the significance in the data. We need to have a p-value that's under 0.05.
In my research, I test the effect of burial on acorn germination, specifically in chestnuts and oak trees. That study will consist of me using a lot of the same species, but having plots of soil and just putting acorns in the soil up above the ground and below the ground and seeing which ones emerge and germinate at high rate. This is what I do for the analyzation part and for the data entering part. All of these it's data about whether or not each seed germinated or merged or didn't do either. And we're hoping to see that the species that are buried will emerge and germinate more. So to test whether or not the seeds are actually germinating at a higher rate than the seeds that are just left on the surface, we have to do some statistical analysis, and that's where biomath is super important. So I have to use a program called R to analyze the data that I got from my fieldwork. The data from our fieldwork shows whether or not seeds emerged or didn't based on whether or not they were buried, but I want to know if that's significant enough to say that that's a trend, and in order to do that, we analyze the data and try to calculate a p-value, and the p-value will tell you whether or not your data was significant enough to show a relationship between these variables. On this program, I can generate graphs, I can generate a lot of different other data subsets that we can analyze by species, by site, by the temperature of the soil, because we have that data as well. But I really need math when I do this kind of biological research, because there would be no way to tell whether or not it has any biological significance if you can't tell if it's statistically significant.